Alright, despite the numerous delays, Tenet has finally been released in theatres, and despite cinemas around the world closing or replaying classic movies at a discounted price to bring audiences back into cinemas, Tenet is the first movie that I have watched in theatres since lockdown. So, how was it? Well, the story is that our character, called the protagonist, has to go on a mission to retrieve an algorithm to prevent it from being used to start World War III. He recruits Neil, played by Robert Pattinson, to assist him, but whilst they are carrying out their mission, an arms dealer, played by Kenneth Branagh, also has interest in the algorithm and tries to steal it for himself so he can use it for his own selfish gains. And from here, the story unfolds, and you get plenty of intellectual story unravelings and plot twists that you have come to expect in a Christopher Nolan film. Now let's talk about the characters. Now, out of all the characters in Christopher Nolan's films, the characters here have next to no backstory or build-up. Much like the team in Inception, the characters here just show up, their roles are established, and then they carry out the mission. Now, John David is the lead character in this, and I gotta say, he had his moments, but unfortunately, I didn't get any leading man vibes from him. Throughout the movie, I was far more captivated by Robert Pattinson's performance. The only movie I've seen him in, other than Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, is a more recent film called Good Times, and to see him in that movie, and to then see him in the Batman trailer, and then see him in Tenet, I can honestly say that he is a chameleon. And I don't say that about a lot of actors, but he really delivers completely different performances in each of his films. Not only is his performance different, but even his voice is different too, and it just blows me away how much he's able to change his performance like this. And by far, I thought whenever he was on screen, the movie suddenly became alive again. But I can honestly say that the rest of the actors, they play their part in the story, but I didn't care for their characters. And I thought that some characters, such as Kat here, just felt like they were bloating the movie with character development that I honestly didn't want to see. The concept of time travel is far more interesting, and the character duo of John David and Robert Pattinson was a lot more fascinating to me. And I wanted to see more of that in the movie, but unfortunately, the movie cuts to these two characters, and the movie starts to slow down most of the time and tells their story, which I honestly didn't like. It just felt like it was used as a means to give our main characters a motivation, but I just didn't find it all that interesting. The motivations behind another one of Nolan's films, Inception, had a very simple and straightforward character motivation, and then they carried out the plan. But with Tenet, it was far more complicated than that, and I just wasn't invested in the reason they were trying to protect this woman, as I really didn't care about her. And that is a big failing of the movie, because she is supposed to be the emotional core of the film, and if I didn't care about her, then that's a problem. And the complicated reason the movie spends a lot of time to provide for her inclusion, unfortunately takes screen time away from both John David and Robert Pattinson. I really wish that they had more of a developing friendship with each other, especially the way the movie ends for the two of them. Now, as for the story, Christopher Nolan and the characters in the film don't refer to it as time travel, but honestly, that just takes the fun out of it, so I'm just going to call it time travel. Now, when Christopher Nolan uses concepts like this in his movies, he usually likes to make it very intellectual and smart, and he has done this with a lot of success in most of his movies, and I was personally looking forward to this, because I thought this was going to be another Inception situation where the characters discuss time travel just like they discussed the dream world. Unfortunately for Tenet though, the intelligent time travel talk was not delivered in a fun or interesting way. It was just dull and very uninteresting. I actually thought it was far more fun watching it be explained visually throughout the film, but the verbal explanations are still a big part of the movie, and Christopher Nolan needs to deliver on that as well as the visual explanations, but I didn't feel that he did. And this is not helped by the fact that the music in this movie was too damn loud. Really, the music was so loud in this film, so much so that it actually drowns out the sound of the dialogue. Nolan's dialogue is often something that you really need to listen to and think about, but it's hard to do that when the music is so bloody loud that it overshadows it. It even drowns out the sound of gunfire and explosions at times too, and I would be fine with that if the music was nice to listen to, but it isn't. Most of it just sounds like noise. The music in a couple of scenes is really good, but the majority of it isn't. Hans Zimmer's compositions were really needed in this movie. Ludwig Göransson gave it a shot, but he's not a good fit for Christopher Nolan. He's clearly trying to emulate the music that Hans Zimmer makes, but in my opinion, he didn't deliver. Ludwig would just really crank the bass of the music so loud and completely overblow the subwoofer as a means to accomplish the same result as Zimmer, but that's not the way it works. Hans Zimmer usually has a lot of nice rhythmic music as well as the bass, and he balances the the two out very well. But Ludwig doesn't balance them, and most of the time he is just beating the subwoofer to death. Now, it's not entirely the composer's fault. I felt that Christopher Nolan also cheats with the direction of the music in this movie too. There are times where two characters are just talking, and in any other movie, this would just be a normal dialogue scene. But Nolan tries to put some disturbing and eerie music in the background to make the scene disturbing and uncomfortable when really, nothing drastic is happening. We are just having two of the characters talking about their plan, and they seem rather laid back and jokey about it. And then the scene cuts and the music just abruptly stops, and you're just sitting in your seats wondering, what the hell was that about? Christopher Nolan uses a technique with his filmmaking called the shepherd's tone. He basically uses this as a way to help the pacing of his movies naturally transition from one scene to the next, whilst very rapidly but unnoticeably raising the tension of the movie. And it's an ingenious technique, and it's worked wonders for him in films such as The Dark Knight and even Dunkirk, but it really felt wonky here, and I could just see the shepherd's tone falling apart. Now, the action scenes were fun. I thought they were very creative, and the intense music in some of these action scenes actually gelled together very well, and it made the action all the more intense. And I loved the reverse effects and how so much of them were done practically, and the way in which they played a part in the action, and they also played a part in the story, which was really cool. And I thought Nolan did those scenes so well, and it's one of the reasons that you will want to watch this movie again. And technically, Christopher Nolan still amazes me as a filmmaker. I love the visuals of his movies, and Tenet is no exception. He just keeps topping himself visually, and the scope and scale of the movie is definitely another reason why I would watch it again, or at least in IMAX, as I have not seen it in there. Also, Kenneth Branagh was in this movie, and I thought he was surprisingly good. I don't like how his story had such a big part in the movie, as I thought the time could have been spent developing the friendship between John David and Robert Pattinson's character, but he was actually very intimidating when he first showed up. The only problem with his performance is that he does go over the top at points, and when combined with the over the top and really loud music, his over the top performance can actually give you a bit of a headache. And as much fun as I had with the action, some of it felt small scale where the stakes weren't that high, but again, the music comes in and goes all out as if to tell you that you are watching one of the most intense scenes of the movie. And then when the scene was over, the music would get very quiet again, and you can't help but think, I thought something big was supposed to happen here, but the characters just accomplished their little pickup very easily. And also, I thought this movie was too long at 2 hours and 30 minutes. It doesn't make good use with his time as much as Inception, which was the same length. And the final action scene in Tenet, although it was truly a visual spectacle, I did feel that the movie was overstaying its welcome at this point. So yeah, as you guys can clearly tell, I had a lot of problems with this movie. I really liked the concept of altering time. Christopher Nolan plays around with time in a lot of his movies, and to actually take time and use it as a science fiction concept was a very natural progression for him. But I just thought he didn't flesh it out like he did with the dreams concept in Inception. There was a lot of dialogue in Inception, but it felt very tight. You were being told a lot of information, but it was all important information. It never felt like it was rambling on or explaining its rules in overly complicated terms, but Tenet does ramble on and say its rules in overly complicated terms, and unlike Inception, it feels like it's doing it just to confuse you rather than to challenge you. If he had the characters explain the rules like they did in Inception, then that would be a lot of fun, but he doesn't. And the explanations in this movie are delivered in a more confusing way, which they didn't need to be. For Christopher Nolan, I thought this movie would be a return to form. For those of us who loved Inception, we'll have another intelligent action movie to watch from Christopher Nolan, and this is not that. Christopher Nolan isn't the same director that he used to be, and the excitement I feel towards his movies is no longer as strong as it once was after this movie. It's time for the score. If the movie was shorter and kept the plot more focused on the time-traveling elements as well as the friendship between John David and Robert Pattinson, then this movie would really be something that I would have loved. But unfortunately, it feels like it's crammed with too much stuff that it doesn't really have a lot of focus, and that's something that Christopher Nolan's last science fiction action film had in spades: focus. His second science fiction action film lacks focus, and although I might enjoy it more down the line, right now it has left me feeling empty and disappointed. And as it stands right now, Tenet gets a 5 out of 10. As you can clearly tell, I am split on this movie. I honestly think that Christopher Nolan needs to just take a step back, because I feel that he reached a nice sweet spot with his filmmaking before, but he has now taken it to a kind of obnoxious level. And remember, this is coming from a guy who loves most of Christopher Nolan's movies, and I've given 3 of them a 10 out of 10, one of them being my favourite movie of all time for the last 12 years, The Dark Knight. So it's tough for me to give his latest movie a rating like this, but that's just how I feel with his current techniques of storytelling. Also, when you first first heard that Christopher Nolan was making a movie where time goes backwards, who else thought of the show Red Dwarf and the episode called Backwards? In this episode, our characters come to a planet that looks just like Earth, but everything is, as you would expect, backwards. And Red Dwarf uses it for a lot of comedy. So people are eating backwards, Lister gets some unexplained injuries, and the injuries go away when the actual fight happens. The characters fight backwards, and yes, they even go to the bathroom backwards.
We've got to stop him. Don't ask.
This was the first thing that I thought of when I heard that Christopher Nolan was making this movie, and yeah, it's kind of funny. And being a fellow Brit himself, I wonder if Christopher Nolan would find the humour in this comparison. So, that's it for my review of Tenet. If you liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to click the subscribe button and the bell right next to it if you haven't already. And if you want exclusive access to my podcasts and early access to my Versus videos, then feel free to donate to me via Patreon. Your donations really help keep the channel going. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see all of you next time. Take care.